Hello and welcome to episode 64 of the Large Format Photography Podcast. My name is Simon Forster and I'm joined by Andrew Bartram and Erik Mathy. Hello, Andrew.
Hello.
Hello, Erik.
Holy crap. Hi, guys.
It's been ages. In fact, I can tell you how long it's been because the last episode went out on January the 16th. And it's halfway through the summer in the Northern Hemisphere, at least, anyway. So, good to be back. So if we do one more show this year, then we're almost regular, aren't we, I suppose?
I mean, if regular means once every 6 months.
well, I think we've all had our challenges this year, which is the main reason why it's taken us over 6 months to actually get back on the air again. So hopefully it won't be as long before the next episode. And now, at this part of the podcast, I usually thank the guests that we had from the previous episode, and seeing that was almost me, I'm not going to thank myself.
Actually, Simon, thanks for coming on. And thanks for coming on this time. Dude, like Simon's back. He did 100% for the shows in 2023. Exactly,
and I intend to be back as well, which is good news. Well, for some people at least, anyway. So what I'm going to do this slightly differently, because we usually do this at the end of the show. But I'm going to thank those people that placed a donation with us via coffee, coffee.com. And we're on there as the Large Format Photography Podcast, and apparently we can be found, although it's not very easy. But there you go. So that's a challenge in itself. So the first person I want to thank, and this was on the 18th of January, was Andy. And it says, keep it up, guys. Love the show. My go-to track for developing. Excellent. And the next one on the 18th of January was Larry H. And it says, thanks for your enjoyable podcasts. It's good to have Simon back. Well, it's good to be back too. Thank you very much, Larry. Then on the 23rd of Jan, we had Nick Marshall, and he says, Happy New Year. Just checking, have you considered contacting conflict cameras? Oh, there's more. Actually, I've only got one line here. This could be bad if there's a whole paragraph of stuff. Here you go. Conflict cameras on as a guest, and then there's a Instagram link, and conflict cameras is down as conflict cameras on Instagram. Okay, well,
we'll talk about that guy.
Oh, we know. Do you want to tell us a little bit about conflict cameras, Erik?
Yeah, he's I don't know his actual what he does, day job or whatever, but he's been working really, really hard for the last couple of years, and he's getting super close to building an autofocus 4x5. And it's a hand carry.
Yeah, I follow him now. I know you're talking about now.
Yeah, and he's getting super close. And the amount of work he's put into this, like really highly technical work, is, I'm gonna do a swear word here. Sorry, is genius. Like they look amazing. Just for the photojournalism, like the style work that I like to do, I'm just like, ooh, hello, Clarice. Like they look great, and I'm super excited for them. Like at the code, he's slinging code in there, 3D printing parts, just all sorts of stuff. They look bloody fantastic.
Well, that sounds like something we really need to look into that one a bit more then.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, next one is Daniel Sandlund. Always excellent. Here's hoping for many new episodes in 2023. Well, too as many, but there you go. We're trying.
Hope is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, it says. But we do think we're going to do more. Okay, and then finally in May, Jim Hobart. Thanks for entertaining and educational banter. New large format photographer here. Using the MPP 5x4 Mark 7, like one of your colleagues.
No, we might have talked about you. Probably you, Simon. You're the only one likely to have.
Yeah, you're the MPP guy.
Yeah, I think I've got a micropress rather than a Mark 4, Mark 7. Because that's the technical camera. I have the press camera with the focal plane shutter, but the MPP Mark 5 Mark 7 is an excellent camera. No two ways about it.
Okay. Isn't the MPP Mark 7 and Mark 8, don't they both have focal plane shutters?
No.
Oh.
But they're excellent cameras. I mean, the Mark 8 is meant to be absolutely outstanding, and I'm sure that the Mark 7 is pretty damn good too.
So which ones have the focal plane shutters in? You might have just said that, but I
did.
Watching the Grand Prix.
I'll say it again. It's the Micropress.
Right. What was that one you were going to send me, or you keep threatening to send me? That's a mini.
That's a speed graphic. I mean, the Micropress is a. I wouldn't call it a rip-off, but I suppose you could.
Go ahead.
Probably could do. But it's like it's a speed graphic, but heavier. It's got more metal in it, and it's got a different rangefinder system in there as well. Not that I use mine, but I think the actual shutter mechanism, I think they made it under license from Graflex, I believe, because I believe it's exactly the same. Which actually, you know what, that brings me on to. This is where we sort of would normally talk about what we've been up to. Hang
on. Have you thanked everybody yet before you go off on?
Yes, that was everybody. That was everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, have they been paying us to stay away, or have they been paying us to, come back?
Well, at least one person wanted more episodes,
okay.
So I think it's a positive thing.
Focus on the positive, Andrew.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. I'm sure the other gentleman who said that we're good for developing darkroom time does not want to listen to the January episode over and over again on an infinite loop. Mm-hmm. So we're going to give them a little variety now. The choice of two.
Precisely. So, but I would normally hand over to Andrew now and ask him what he's been up to. But I'm going to carry on talking for a little bit longer because, seeing that we're on the subject of MPP and Micropress, I did a photo walk yesterday in Liverpool. There's a Mersey meetup walk with Stig of the Dump. Steve Starr organised that. That's Stig of the Dump on Twitter, and I think you've got to put some underscores in there to get the correct Stig of the Dump, because I believe there are several. But we quite regularly do photo walks in Liverpool, and to be fair, most photo walks don't involve large format cameras, but this time it did.
They should.
And it should, and this one did, because keeping on the MPP theme, a chap who I mentioned on the last podcast was George Walsh, who serviced and repaired my MPP Micropress, in particular the focal plane shutter. He came along on the walk, and he's local to Liverpool as well, so he should. And he brought along with him a Graflex Super D. But it was a 3x4, which we've discussed this before about whether a 3x4 camera is actually a large format camera or not.
It is.
Andrew,
I don't care whether it is or isn't really. If you want to call it a large format camera,
yeah. Well, we're happy. We're happy with 2x3s, 3x2 cameras because they use sheet film. And I think sheet film is probably where large format is all about, even if the sheets aren't as big as some other ones. But
and if anyone out there wants to argue contrarily, you can send us an email to where, Eric?
We're that okay, fine.
We're doing it early.
Yeah, well, just in case I have to leave.
Oh shit, I can't remember. Is it large format photography podcast @gmail.com?
That's it.
Well done. So send your emails to Eric to argue about whether 3x4 is large format.
Yeah,
not that we care.
Not that we care.
But it might be entertaining briefly.
Yeah, bring it.
And we'll read it out at the next show at Christmas time.
Well, the other part of that is that this wasn't an ordinary 2x3 camera. And apologies for people that may have been on the show and told us about this before. But I've
2x3 or 3x4? I wrote down 3x4 a minute ago because
3x.
It's shrinking every time you mentioned it.
Yeah, I'm getting really confused.
Like my soul.
It was. So is there a 3x4
I've no idea. I'm just writing it down. You're the expert.
2x3, a 3x4, and then.
Okay. It's 3x4. So that's definitely getting closer to indisputable.
2x3. We might be open to arguments.
Yeah, I actually own a 3x4 Graflex and have photographed the living hell out of it. You just need to get the film holders and then. Get X-ray film or something and cut it down, right? Because they don't really make that size except for Ilford's, once a year, weird size.
Well,
order.
Well, wait for this, Erik.
Okay, wait, then bring it.
Yeah.
Continue.
By the way, are you using a Speed Graphical or Super D?
Depends on the day. Lately I've been using SLRs, so
yeah,
the various supers.
So he's got a 3x4 Super D, and he's modified it to 4x4, which is awesome, in my opinion.
A 4x4.
Yeah, and apparently the conversion to make it 4x4 is not that difficult.
And then just shooting film holders?
Yeah, you're just banging a 4x5 sheet film, and you're losing an inch, but you're getting a square large format frame, which is as far as I'm concerned, that's great. But I love square format anyway. I can shoot square format all the time. So that's really knocked you back in your chair there, Erik.
Yeah. Because I love square format. Like I love square format a lot. The Pentacon 6s are my favorite medium format cameras ever, and there's times even when I'll shoot the digital for B-roll on the pieces I do, and I'll shoot that square because I love square. You're right, I love square. I think this is different because it forces you to frame things in a completely different way than like what we're used to if you sort of grew up cutting your teeth on 35 millimeter, as I think most of us did, in that like rectangular format, right? And also just think about the mechanics of converting a 3x4 to a 4x4. He had to have like shoved it back, give it a little bit more room.
Well, let me put out your misery. I think it's at some point in some points in the future, in not too many shows, we'll be asking George to come on.
All right.
And he can tell you all about it. Because he's an interesting chap as well. Because he's shooting a lot of wet plates at the moment, and he showed me a picture of his new enlarger. Which is a 10x10 enlarger, and the photograph of his 10x10 enlarger had a DeVere 504 sitting in it, and it made it look like a toy. Yeah, so we need to have a chat to George, and he's a nice chap, and so at some point in the not too distant future, George, you'll be with us. Okay, so that was yesterday. Just a couple other things to catch up on. I've taken very few large format photographs this year, except this year I found myself down a culvert. I don't know if that's a word that translates into American.
A culvert would be a ditch.
Yeah, that's a similar kind of thing as that. So it's man-made, and this particular one is for water coming from a hillside and sewage. Pretty much the two things. And I put myself and a friend down into a culvert deliberately to get a shot with large format.
With or without sewage? Like, did you sacrifice? Did you wade in sewage for this?
Well, it was a case there was fluid going down this tunnel, and it was basically a concrete pipe that we were in. And he felt like a concrete. No, he wasn't a concrete pipe, but it had that kind of shape at the base of it, and so I could walk up it, stooping as well, because it was a tunnel, and I could if I could spread my legs wide enough, I could like walk up on one side to the other without getting too wet. I was in wellies as well, so I could actually get wet, so that wasn't too bad, but it didn't smell that bad. There was a whiff. And the other side of it is, there was a waterfall on the other side, although it's a man-made thing, and it's quite an interesting situation. I have no idea if the photographs have turned out, so I messed one up, and I haven't developed the rest of them yet. But I'm hopeful. But what I do know is, when I got back, and my tripod absolutely stank. And I still haven't actually built up the courage to go out to the garage to actually soak it and jet wash it or do whatever I need to do with it before I can use it again. And I really, really hope that the photo was worth it.
So when you say you screwed up the one of them is screwed up, it's like you just screwed up the exposure, and you've got to figure out, okay, how do I fix this in development? Or
it was actually no. I think I think I exposed it correctly. And then the fact that I haven't been taking enough large format photos, I'd forgotten to flip the dark slide to tell me which side was exposed and which one wasn't. And then I took the holder out for some reason. And I thought, oh, no, I better do the other side. I'll do a similar exposure. And then I couldn't remember which side I'd done. So I've got one's exposed, one's not exposed. And then I did a few others with a different film. But I think I used Adox CHS 100 for one of them, or more of them, and I used HP5 as well. So, and hopefully I can remember which ones I used of those, because that's going to be fun for developing. And I'll be doing that in 510 Pyro, because that's my go-to developer at the moment. So, I like that. It certainly scans well. I haven't printed with it yet, but it scans brilliantly. So, fingers crossed, it'll do the job. And Andrew, you're a big Pyro user these days, aren't you?
Sorry, did you say something?
So you're using a lot of Pyro at the moment, Andrew.
I'm not actually. No. I'm mostly using ID11 1+1, because ID11 neat and diluted ID11, then it changes its nature. The more you dilute it, it becomes more like a sort of surface acting developer like HC110, like Rodinol, and those blends of developers, and it loses a bit of sharpness, but in large format it doesn't really matter too much. But ID11 neat is what's called a solvent developer, where it sort of replates itself with silver in a very, bear in mind I'm not a chemist, but that's basically what it means, I think, is a solvent effect on the film and on the silver, and it kind of replates itself and it helps with sharpness. So ID11 and D76, which get loads of bad press. I think they get loads of bad press because they get accused of being, just like boring, aren't they? But actually really interesting developers. And so I've been using those. But funnily enough, I did actually purchase a small amount of PyroCat HD, sorry, James Lane, to develop my World War I pictures in, because I know from previous experience that when I rate Fomapan 64 with my setup, with my lenses that I'm using for large format at ISO 64, and then develop them in PyroCat HD for 10 minutes, 1+1 plus 100, no fancy semi-stand or anything, just 30 seconds and then 2 or 3 inversions every minute. I get, like you had with 510 Pyro, negatives that, in my case, print really easily. And the staining is less on Fomapan 100 than it is on FP4 or HP5. In fact, when you first look at them, you think, has it stained it at all? But when you compare it next to an ID11 negative, you can see there's a definite brown tinge to it. And so I did buy some, and I've used it all up because I developed my 4x5 negatives, and I've had some lovely results with 510 Pyro. But I don't, it's just a bit thick, really, a bit like me, probably. That's the reason why I don't like using it. And it stains the heck out of things you touch, You're using it in the middle of the summer, Simon. So,
very true.
I'm going to get hate mail from James Lane there. So
just put it in your pocket and walk around with it for a bit. Yeah, that's it.
Well, it's like the end of.
Thanks for that question, Simon.
The end of Ferris Bueller's Day Off, when the principal goes and he sits in the bus next to the weird kid, and she pulls out a gummy bear and she's like, "Would you like a gummy bear? It's warm. It's been in my pocket." You could just do that. Just stick with PyroCat in your pocket.
You're just weird on your hair. I've missed speaking to you.
Yeah, I do my best. I've just been using plain old boring HC110. It's
absolutely
concentrate. It's
again, you can by choice of developer dilution, you can marry it to whatever sort of shooting conditions you were under, can't you?
Yeah, pretty much. If I actually kept track of shooting conditions.
Yeah, I know. I say that as well. Like I was away, and I was in my head. I was sort of monitoring the brightness range, numbers of stops, and I had a plan to separate sheets of film to say, well, I need to give this one a bit more extra development, or this one a bit less. But in the end, they all went in a box, and I just developed them all for the ssame time.
Yeah, I mean, with the I've been shooting a metric shit ton of the Ilford Ortho Plus 4x5.
Why? Why have you been using that film? What do you like about it?
Actually, versus it's more expensive than than the other ortho films I typically shoot.
But why do you like? What is it about the ortho films that you like for your subject matter?
It depends. Like for my World War I stuff, I wanted to shoot something that was more period correct, right? Because panchromatic film didn't really exist.
Okay.
In the early 1900s.
You could just use ordinary panchromatic film with a blue filter, couldn't you?
Cyan filter, I think, technically, right?
Well,
Like blue, yeah. If you want to do stops, but also, panchromatic film is typically expensive, more expensive than the Arista stuff. But the Arista, it shoots, 6 or 8 ASA, and then you got to push it to 25 ASA if you aren't doing anything with good light.
Mm-hmm.
And the Ilford Plus, Ortho Plus is naturally rated 80 ASA, which means you can shoot it essentially at 50 or 100, and you're within half a stop up or down, right? And without having to really change your development any, if that's what you want to do. And you can push it to 200, which is only like a stop and a half, and it's barely a push, and it handles it really, really well.
Mm.
But also, I can, because like I just said, I don't keep track of what the light was like or anything else. I can develop underneath a red light and kind of monitor it as I go and keep it. They'll be like, okay, I think this should be 6 or 7 minutes, and then it needs a little bit more, it needs a little bit less. Oh shit, I need to pull that right now.
What about ruddy-faced gentlemen, or people with lots of red, like people who drink too much, they've got big red noses. That's a nice look, isn't it? With an ortho
the tonality with that film actually is really good. Like I get sky, I can get clouds. Like it doesn't.
Yeah, but apart from a red filter, you can change using a yellow or orange filter does have an effect as well, doesn't it?
Yeah. If I paid attention to those things either, I just load it up and I just shoot it.
Who's just releasing a 400 speed ortho film?
Wait, who? What?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. It's coming out.
Lies.
It's either coming out or is out, isn't it? I'm not just making that up, am I, Simon?
I've not heard it either.
Oh, you.
Oh, FOMA.
There we go.
I'll be damned.
If I could use my iPhone with any kind of certainty, see how that screen's cracked there? There's a story about that. I'll tell you a bit. I've just ordered a new refurbished because I just can't use this anymore because I can't see what I'm doing with it. I'd Google more and find out about it. FOMA. Yeah,
FOMA.
Is it released yet?
I don't know. It's a good question. I mean, I would love it if they released this in
120, isn't it? 120.
Yeah, 120, which is sadness. I mean, it's fine. I shoot 120 a bunch too, but I've been shooting predominantly 4x5 actually lately. Mm-hmm. It's not. Wow, that's not a bad cost. Holy crap! Seriously?
Well, it's FOMA, isn't it? What are they pitching it at?
€5.94 a roll.
Okay, that's pretty good.
That's at least compared to other.
Yeah, I think the Ilford stuff probably depends where you buy it from, but you're probably looking £6-7 a roll, aren't you, for the Ilford?
Yeah, exactly. Stuff? For 80 ASA. Oh, I might have to get some of this and muck around with it.
Mm-hmm.
For my medium format stuff, which I just haven't been doing lately, but I might. But yeah, and also to finish out the Ilford HC110 thing, it's a base development of 6 minutes.
Yeah, so it's just that's the other thing. So whilst you can dilute ID11 down 1+3, and then it becomes probably a true compensating developer. So that just means that if you want to control the highlights, which something like a staining developer typically does, or some other split working developers based on D23 or something, so what might be known as compensating developers, then
it compensates for
the time for shit exposure or just poor.
I would say doctor's inadequacies, but
yeah. Well, in fact, that's quite so. Bring me back to ID11 diluted 1-3 in a minute, but so what about if you just have a fairly slapdash approach to exposure? So just overexpose everything to make sure you get good shadow detail, which isn't a bad thing, and then just develop it in a forgiving developer that you don't have to worry that you've pushed all the highlights up a bit too far, because the developer's going to probably control it.
Relate to that. That's pretty much what I do.
Diluting ID11 or D76 1-3. is nice. So then it does become a compensating developer, and you lose some sharpness, and it becomes more of a developer, a bit like HT110 surface acting developer. But the times get really stupidly long. You might almost start doing stand developing them at, might take 25 minutes to do Fomapan 100 or something. And that,
I mean,
and then you can't even leave it. You have to keep, every minute.
Yeah.
Or you still having to stand there, aren't you? So it's a bit of a ball's ache, really.
I shot the Arista Ortho on Route 66 and pushed it to 25 ASA the entire time. So full 2 stops.
Mm-hmm.
And the development time became 18 and a half minutes.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if it was
that was HT110, was it? Or
I think it was Rodinal 1-100 or something, super, super diluted. But every film development run was 18 and a half minutes in the developer alone. So it was, but they came out fully tonal. They came out beautiful. Were
you able to keep the temperature at 20 degrees, or were you doing it at higher temperature? And did you
room temp?
Was it
room temp 68? Yeah. It was at Rayco, the now sadly long gone Rayco Center in San Francisco, and they just had a sheet development room. So I could just reserve the sheet development room for 6 hours.
Oh, I thought you were talking about something recently.
No, this is Route 66. Route 66 for me was 8 years ago at this point.
Have you ever spoken at length to us about that, or did I just zone out when you started talking about it?
I mean, it's fair to say that you probably should have zoned out if I did talk about it.
You've talked about the butterscotch route or whatever it's called, haven't you?
Gosh, that works for me.
Is that the male route or whatever it's called?
Yeah. No, I don't.
Talked about that one probably as a guest.
Yeah. I don't know if I've ever talked about Route 66. Yeah, I bicycled Route 66 with a travel wide 8 years ago.
I think you may have touched on it, but when we get really desperate and haven't got a guest, we'll get you back on to talk about it.
Talk about it. Yeah.
I was going to say, well, let's use this moment to catch up on what Erik's been up to recently, because you've been up to a lot on your bike again, haven't you? And in an airplane as well.
Yeah. It's been a busy year so far, and like I said, shockingly, I haven't been shooting 4x5 for a bit, but then all this year, most of my work is centered around 4x5 work. In the spring, I flew to Paris and rode from Paris to Roubaix on the famous Paris-Roubaix is a famous bicycle race, one of the spring classics. All the people out there who listen to the podcast who intersect between bikes, the bike nerddom and camera nerddom, no Paris-Roubaix. So I rode the World War I 1919 Paris-Roubaix course, and then did some portraits and photography of the Paris-Roubaix women's race with 4x5 with the Polaroid 800 that I've converted to 4x5 for portraits. It's a brilliant camera. It's so underrated compared to the Polaroid 110. Everybody goes for the 110, because it's got the adjustable shutter and everything, and they throw away the 800s. And I'm here to tell you that 800 lens is hack damn sharp. It's an amazing portrait lens. Andrew.
Didn't want to just interrupt you.
No, by all means.
Weren't you converting something, Simon, in one of your many little side strings? Before you started before you started properly 3D printing lens caps, a long time ago, weren't you converting something?
I was, but I got so far with it. But I was determined to. I forget which Polaroid it was now. Erik's probably just mentioned it.
I think it was the 110.
It was a Japanese iteration of it. It's one that people do convert to 4x5, but I was trying to do it in a way that was completely non-destructive. And I got to a part where it was impossible not to destruct it. Yeah. So, and I thought that's it. I lost my interest in it at that point. So it's sitting in pieces.
I mean, I think you might theoretically be able to do it in some level with a minimum amount of destruction for 4x5.
It's just the positioning where the front standard goes onto the rail. It's riveted. The part.
Yeah, you just have to pop out the rivet. That's not destructive. That's a standard operating procedure.
No, that's in my opinion, that's destructive.
We're gonna have a slightly vigorous debate because is moving the front standard with a rivet and then you re-screw it down. It's not destructive. No, and you have to in order to change the film plane. There's no way to do it otherwise.
Exactly, and that's where it was. But
it's just a rivet.
Yeah, I'm taking a no compromise.
Dude, that's way too purist.
I've moved on.
Then send it to me. Like finish it out so everything is 4x5 converted. All you need to do is undo the rivet and adjust the front standard by 5 millimeters, and I will take that shit for you. That's fine.
So then, Erik, you were saying.
The 800s are brilliant portrait cameras. Like they are fantastic. And then I've just done a whole series of pieces with 4x5 portraits. The handmade 4x5 box camera, my pandemic camera, and handmade lens came out to play for some portraits for one piece, and then the 4x5 box camera and like an early 1900s Kodak 3A lens on it for another piece of portraits. And just lately, the Intrepid 4x5 has come out to play again. The Mark II, which is now like old school, like they're on like what, Mark V or something like that at this point, I think, Mark VI. So that's come out. A piece that just got published today was shot with that, and I'm really, really, really happy with those portraits. And then an ongoing series that I'm shooting on bicycle, small American manufacturers of small bicycle parts, because globalization, all that sort of stuff has really killed American manufacturing. So I'm doing a series of portraits around like people who make stuff, and somehow earn a living doing it.
Is this on? Sorry, Simon. Is this Louis guy you posted a picture of recently? A CAD guy. No, I don't mean he's a CAD, like a bander.
He's like a CAD. Yeah, Lewis.
He hasn't got a long twirly wax moustache.
No. No, CAD, computer assisted drawing.
You posted this picture on Instagram, and you said that this was with a handmade lens.
Yeah.
And you said it sharpens up a lot at f11ish.
Yeah, exactly.
But you weren't sure that it was the kind of vibe you wanted for that portrait.
Yeah, it's like sometimes, and also, starting with the Pride Cat portraits that went up today. The thing with the handmade lenses is like when you shoot them straight on flat film plane, that you guys have seen it. It's got that center, and then it drops off really rapidly. So if you're shooting portraits, like their face has to be in the middle of the frame, which is really boring and limited. So that's why I broke out the Intrepid. So I could take that front standard and like sort of move it around and like try to get the very, very limited, very difficult to control, focal plane for the handmade lenses someplace that was usable for a portrait, like putting their face someplace other than the middle of the frame. And it works. It works really well once you sort of put the front standard through like yoga and gymnastics, and like it gets into all sorts of crazy positions to get the shot. But then you can get a lot of things sharp and in focus that maybe I didn't want to have, at certain.
This picture of the man, I think he's a man. It looks like he's about to fall off his bicycle, but he's probably not.
Yeah, Lee.
It's probably deliberate, isn't it? Is that? So that's a few pictures down from your Instagram feed. Is that with the Intrepid?
Yeah, it's just the Intrepid, but that's straight on. Like that's an example of how the handmade lenses do. If you just keep like the front standard straight, the focal plane straight, and just like straight on without any
So his legs in focus.
Yeah, and then everything else just blurs right the hell
people
out.
Immediately behind him are quite sharp, aren't they? It's almost like you've got a tunnel. It's quite interesting, actually. I've not looked at this before, mainly because my phone's knackered. But you've got this weird tunnel of sharpness. This is, I think you've discovered some new Scheinflug variation. Scheinflug's tunnel.
Exactly.
Have you seen this? There's like his leg, and then there's a tunnel of sharpness. It's not just my eyes, is it? I'm sure it's...
No.
It's weird. Look at that. Scheinflug's tunnel. Never a bit of...
Exactly. So I think that's it. That shot was F11 or F16. With a handmade lens. It's a late 1890s brass lens from a 5x7 that I removed one of the commercial optical elements and put in some random achromat from a surplus shed and just like blew it to pieces, as I do. So yeah, just shooting a ton of photojournalism 4x5 stuff, and it's been going really well. Like I actually like a lot of the results. I like a lot of the portraits that have been coming out. Of like the stories that are being done, and kind of getting to a point where I'm getting more of that work. I mean, it's not enough to come anywhere close to paying any kind of bill, but it's kind of nice to have work sort of randomly show up sometimes, or to like pitch somebody to go in and do a story on them and have them say, "Oh yeah, I saw that piece you did. That was really great. We're totally open to having you come in and make photographs and talk to us."
So this bicycle route, the Paris-Roubaix race, how far is that?
It was 250-ish miles.
And did you weren't racing, but you were plodding along with a load of photo gear in panniers?
Yeah, I had like a 25, and I'm going to switch to European measurements. Metric. I had like a 25 kilogram ish backpack of like, I brought a Kodak 3A. I brought the Polaroid 800, the Kodak 3A, the Fuji GFX 50, and a variety of lenses for the GFX, like 12 4x5 film holders for the Polaroid 800, and a boatload of medium format film.
But you were agonizing, like everyone does when they go anywhere, about what to take with you. And I think you had a few false starts. I mean, in the end, did you take the right amount of gear, or do you think you could have got away with fewer cameras? Do you think that would have helped if you do it again now? What takeaways have you got from that trip in terms of the sort of portraits you made, and could you like leave half the stuff behind?
Right, I could have. Generally, I brought like a strobe and an L bracket for it, and really agonized over like getting that to work with the Polaroid 800, because the 800 doesn't have a modern flash sync to it. And that was a lot of extra gear and weight and bulk. Then in the end, I didn't end up using the strobe at all. So I probably could have left the flash and the flash bracket and all that sort of stuff at home. But you never know. That's like a CYA. The second you leave it at home was the second like you get there. It's like, oh crap, I really needed this. The real bummer was that the Kodak 3A that I converted to shoot 6x14 like broke on the last day. The shaft that connects the mirror to the reset mechanism, I haven't taken it apart yet or sent it off, snapped or just like stopped working, so I couldn't reset the mirror anymore. And that was shitty. That was a huge bummer. I mean, I got 4 days in the field riding with it and everything, and some really great images, but it was a huge bummer to have that fail. And I took it because it's period correct. Like in World War I, that camera was what the U.S. Signal Corps actually, one of the cameras the U.S. Signal Corps actually take and used to photograph the war and try to control the narrative of the war, actually. So it was important for me to use a piece of period correct equipment with a period correct lens. I didn't use a handmade. It's a French lens is what I had on it from like the early 1900s. So that was the bummer. That was the real big bummer for me, was having the 3A cack out, on the last day. Actually, when I was shooting one of the Commonwealth grave sites, where Rudyard Kipling's son is buried.
What was the name of that? Can you remember?
I can look it up real quick. It's in all my notes. But yeah, I got there to photograph his son's grave and took it out, and there's like a bunch of Commonwealth grave folks there. They were redoing the cross at the front and all this great construction, and they were doing yard work along amongst the graves and everything. And I was like, this is perfect. This is great. And I hooked myself into the farm field across the road from the cemetery, and took it out and went to like, oh, it needs to be recocked, and it's just like, oh, it's just flipping in. Oh, son of a bitch, it's broken. No, that's St. Mary's ADS Cemetery in Haisnes French.
Somewhere.
John Kipling. Yeah, it's John Kipling who died at. He died at Chalk Pit Wood, right across the way from there.
Remind me when we get onto a similar sort of theme to talk about bodies recovered recently, Canadian bodies at Vimy Ridge.
Okay.
Tell you
Sure.
about that in a minute.
Yeah, it was. That whole trip was really interesting. I mean, getting off of like large format photography or whatever. Second, yeah, it was an eye-opening trip. The sheer
is it the
volume
first
of-
time you've seen those Commonwealth War graves?
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, first time. I won't say it's the first time I've been to France. Definitely the first time I've been to northern France.
Yeah,
for sure. And it's a very, very interesting section of France. It's very agricultural and very industrial. As my buddy Sofiane, who was sort of my guide on the ride, said, it's like one of the poor sections of France, but honestly, the nicest section of France. It's like people in the north will actually like stop and talk to you and ask you if you need help and like be very open and friendly and welcoming. It's like, we're not like that in the rest of France. It's like, the rest of France, we're not like this. we don't do that. And not necessarily the nicest section to ride bikes through for 5 days, because it's all farm fields or whatever. But I don't know. It's like where I grew up, so it's not anything that's.
Well, there's we spent 4 days in Belgium because we were only like 30 minutes from the Belgian border, and cyclists everywhere.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Boy, they get in the way. Sorry. So if you've got any, if you want to send hate mail to me about cyclists,
I was going to say, says Andrew, the caravan owner.
Yeah, but I get over there and park it up, and I don't go and bother people with it.
Yeah, but you're still going to be bothering plenty of cyclists and other road users while you're towing.
Well, it doesn't take. To be honest, it doesn't take much to bother the average French driver who are just idiots, quite frankly.
And here we go.
Yeah.
But the amount of cyclists, goodness me, in Belgium in particular,
yeah,
they're everywhere. Just when I set my tripod up, there's another one coming down.
Well, I mean, so you're saying they're in the way of your photographs, not of your driving.
Well, both really. They should just get cars, shouldn't they? That make life a lot easier.
No, you're not getting any sympathy from me here on that one.
So did you? So I've got this vision of you sweating profusely, trying to catch up with these riders who are going a lot quicker than you. And by the time you get there to take your pictures, they've probably moved on to the next stage. Or how did that work?
So the main piece was on the intersection of cycling and war. So Paris-Roubaix is a very famous bike race that started in the late 1800s. And the first time it was ever not raced was, I think, 1915 or 1916 after World War I broke out. And then it has this nickname that's called the Hell of the North. And everybody thinks it's that because of the race conditions. It's run in the spring, so usually when it's wet and cold and muddy and shitty. And they specifically run the race over as many sections of those old cobblestone or pave as they can, which makes it absolutely brutal. And they do it on like road bikes, right? Not mountain bikes or anything, skinny tires. So it's a race that's famous for its sheer brutality. And most people think that Hell of the North nickname comes from the brutality of the race and the weather. But in reality, it comes from the 1919 edition of the race when they first got back from World War I. The race was run 5 months after Armistice. And if you draw a line from Paris to Roubaix, the last 2/3 of that line is the Western Front. So they raced through the very recent remnants of the Great War and towns that didn't exist and cemeteries and carnal fields and sewage and just death, destruction everywhere. The guy who won it is famous for saying this wasn't a race, this was a pilgrimage. And it earned the name the Hell of the North because of that edition of the race. But most people don't know that. Even the racers, a lot of the racers don't know that. And it struck me that as we have things like Syria and Ukraine and other sorts of happenings in the world, even World War II, that the Great War was supposed to be the war to end all wars. It's supposed to be the last war, and it wasn't. And so we carry things forward from war that we don't realize, like the names of a bike race. And we oftentimes don't seem to learn the lessons that we should learn. And I want to do a piece on that intersection of like everyday life or like cycling or whatever with something that we should actually be talking about and something that we should actually be learning from. So myself and a friend retraced the original 1919 route to kind of see what was still there and make photographs and, talk to some people if we could, to do a piece on that kind of intersection of cycling culture, popular culture, and history and today's events. Right. I guess generally speaking, I try as often as I can to find things that I think we should be talking about as a world, as a society. But in the venue of cycling, because that's where I work and that's where people are willing to listen to me and that's where people are willing to publish my stuff. Right. So yeah, so I wasn't chasing that particular part of it. Wasn't chasing anybody. Although Sophie Ann is much faster than me. And then I photographed the women's edition of the Paris-Roubaix, this is only the third year. So it's only been 3 years that the women have had their own professional edition of the race. Have actually gotten some level of parity and equality, even though they're still paid less. To do portraits of the women who raced Paris-Roubaix. And that went really well. That was super fun. That's if you can go see one single spring classic, as they're called, go see Paris-Roubaix. It's an absolute blast. It's brutal and epic, and the roadside parties, the Belgians show up 3 or 4 days beforehand in their caravans and just hang out at the side of the road, and it's in the middle of nowhere, just drinking and partying and hanging out with anybody who will stop to talk to them. It's a total blast. It's a great time.
It's good. Have you developed everything? Developed all your film that you brought back?
I still have to develop some 35mm stuff. I just haven't gotten to. I just sort of got really busy as soon as I got home. But the portraits of the women who raced Paris-Roubaix, that stuff is up and published with interviews.
So you've mentioned twice published. I mean, is that different from something else that was published? Are you published twice now, or more?
I've probably had, I don't even know, 5 or 6 pieces published in the last.
Would you like to list the publications that you've been published in, just in case anybody's and these will be in the notes, so we will check the
right. So. Most of the work is up at an online cycling magazine called the Radavist, TheRadavist.com, who are willing to publish non-traditional work. A lot of cycling media is pretty traditional, and I don't know that they're not necessarily into the things that I do. And then I have one interview and series of photos and of portraits on a famous current contemporary bicycle racer from Australia named Lachlan Morton. That's going into an American mountain biking magazine called Mountain Flyer. Mountain Flyer's name of magazine. They're quarterly, and that's going into their photo annual, which is coming out in, I think, a month and a half. And then I've just been commissioned to do a piece for a German cycling culture magazine, print magazine. I still have to hammer out the details on and whatnot. So, yeah, getting there.
No, that's absolutely excellent. I mean, it's great when a member of this podcast is getting some kind of publicity out there, and obviously it makes Andrew and I look more credible that we've got somebody that actually knows what they're doing on.
No. I mean, Andrew's running his workshops that seem quite popular. I mean, you're getting people in there all the time. Am I mistaken in this, Andrew? You're doing.
Oh, it's been fairly quiet this year, but that's mainly down to changing work patterns and life patterns, really. So I've only had 2 this whole year. I think a bit similar to the podcast. It's just as well I don't rely on it to pay the mortgage. What mortgage? Oh, sorry. Pay the bills. Yeah. Anyway,
Actually, you should do more of those.
Well, moving on from northern France, should we talk about northern Belgium? Belgium,
we were in France actually. So rewind back to maybe 2017. If you dig into my WordPress blog, which is probably Warboys Snapper or something, anyway, or just Google me, Andrew Bartram, WordPress.com, I think, maybe. Well,
it'll be in the notes. We'll find
there'll be a link. Yeah, I think it's one of those things that's permanently listed in the notes, so you've no excuse but to go and to not go and look for it. So back then, I went with a mate of mine, my mate Will, and an old work colleague, and we had 3 or 4 days in at the campsite in Ypres. So that's on the Western Front. It was occupied as a town by the Allies, mainly French and mainly the French, but then reinforced, over the early part of World War I by the Canadians and other Commonwealth members. And at one point, the German lines were almost at a point of taking Ypres over, and then they kind of stalled, and the Allies pushed back. And it formed all through between 1914 and 1918. There was this moving front line. Well, when I say moving, I mean it probably moved no less than a quarter of a mile in all those years. Right. Certainly in 1 year, I think, if not the whole. Yeah, so I've got to be careful with my stats here. I know 250,000 people died, and the front line moved 10 yards or something. It's just ridiculous. So this is known as a salient, and you can do battlefield tours, or you can, there's some really good book resources out there. They give you battlefield guides, or you can take guided tours, and you can go around this. You can follow the Ypres salient and revisit a multitude of Commonwealth graves, museums that have sprung up, craters from mines that were dug by the Allies under the southern half of the Western Front line near Messines, near the ridge. And on one day in 1915, maybe, the Allies simultaneously exploded this line of high explosives all the way down the front line underneath the German positions. And goodness knows how many Germans were killed. But basically, it took part of the salient and made it into a straight line, and they almost overnight gained half a mile or something. And you can revisit these craters, and there are a few in the landscape. Some of them are in private ownership. An easy to get to one is at Zilbeck, which is to the north of Ypres, and that's at Hill 60, which was at the time 60 meters in height. I think these days it's more like 20 meters because it's just had the Jesus bombed out of it, So I went with Will, and we spent 3 days really just going to different sites around the salient. And this is 2017. I took my Toyo with me and some FP4, and I had a couple of other cameras, but maybe I wasn't really sure at the time what I was going to be doing. I went with no clear idea of what I was doing there, and the project, such as it is, kind of emerged by accident because I found myself. We were visiting these war cemetery after war cemetery, and as you drive into on this trip I've just done now with Julie, we head into Belgium, and virtually on every street corner, on every field corner, there's a small cemetery because they buried these people where they died, pretty much. Just after they put the bodies together into makeshift cemeteries, and after the war, they gathered them together and made a bit of a cemetery. But why would you take them, 100 miles somewhere when, it's just easier to create a cemetery where it is. So these cemeteries are just on corners of fields, and they're all signposted. And to be honest, this sounds really harsh, doesn't it? But when you've seen one, you've seen them all, because they're like lines of pristine white graves, and it's all very moving. And yet, and I started turning my back physically, not I don't really turn my back on it, but just looking at the landscape around, which is now, northern France, rolling landscape, agricultural, quite nice, pretty landscape. Some industrial places, we visited some site of some really fierce fighting, and now it's like an industrial estate with modern warehouses and things. And I found myself photographing things like that. So I photographed these the warehouses, and I photographed north of Ypres. There's Essex Cemetery, where the guy who wrote On Flanders Field, Canadian surgeon, he wrote the poem. He was based there, and you can go visit the bunkers where he healed people and cut their legs off and things. As a surgeon. And so I found myself not photographing the obvious, really, and photographing things quite banal things, really. Well, the image, I think all the photographs I made are pretty banal, and it started in my head to take on a meaning when you link it to what is behind me as I'm taking these pictures. You see, right. So there's this, I'm standing on almost on top of 2,000 dead Commonwealth soldiers, at my back, and I'm photographing the landscape, whatever that happens to be around me. Sometimes a broad landscape, sometimes a bit of detail, using some of the, like Erik was talking about with, forget Scheinflug. You're just sort of randomly moving the standards until you get something that you like the look of, on the ground glass, to try and pick out a bit of barbed wire, on a post, and then some poppies, which of course is black and white mostly, in the background. So some of that sort of stuff, a little bit of detail, but mainly fairly straight on shots of the landscape, with a bit of forward tilt to maximize depth of field. And the project, halfway through the trip in 2017, I think I'd probably watched that film, What Lies Beneath, and maybe that influenced the title, but that was a thought that came to me, what lies beneath. And so that's the idea behind these landscapes. So going again this time was an opportunity to carry on that project, really. So we revisited some of the sites I'd been to with Will, and but we did a lot more as well, because I wanted to take Julie back to Bedford House Cemetery, which is just beautiful. We visited this museum at a place called Huge Crater. Now that's spelled H-O-O-G-E, not huge as in big.
Although it's probably pretty big, right? I think it was pretty.
It was pretty much on the front line, on the Ypres salient. A salient is a word that means bulge, so that's the bulge in the front line that went round Ypres, which was most famously fought over in 1917 in the Third Battle of Ypres, which is known as Passchendaele, which was just madness personified in the buffoon generals in London telling people to go and throw themselves into machine guns, and anyway, it's just dreadful, really. The madness of war. No wonder they said it was the war to end all wars. So I was looking at the itinerary the night before, and I said to Julie, this place looks really interesting. There's this huge HWG crater museum. So it was near, not so far away from Hill 60, another one of these craters, but the crater's no longer there. The site where the crater is now a cemetery, and across the road from the cemetery is this museum, and it was like €8 to get in, and it was fascinating. I mean, the amount of stuff that's in there was mostly stuff that the owner had recovered from digs, archaeological digs over the years, and you were just overwhelmed with the amount of material on there, and you weren't overwhelmed with there wasn't a lot of writing to read, so it was good visually. In fact, it probably could have done with a bit more context. There was a really good audio-visual thing summarizing the whole of the way the salient moved over the years, and because it can be really confusing to, the First Battle of Ypres, the Second Battle of Ypres, Third Battle of Ypres, Passchendaele, and so on. It can be really confusing. So that was very helpful. But then we went upstairs, and they've got this big window looking out over the cemetery, over the big round window. They call it the eye over the field of the dead or something. And up there, this fairly new development, I think. There was 3 separate displays of the soldiers, the young men. They were 19 to 22, who were buried across the road. And there was like a photograph of their gravestone and some medals and a bit of the sort of background and maybe some letters they had on them when their bodies were recovered. And one of them was from Roubaix, where I live. And it was just nuts, We suddenly found this one guy. And he's not on, it turns out he's not on the, I'm waving my arms around so people can see. He's not on the World War I memorial in the village at all. And I messaged lady who does local history while I was out there and said, well, find this guy, his surname is King. And she said, no, he's not on there. So when I got back, she said, well, I got to the bottom of it because him and his family had moved from Roubaix to London when he was quite young. So he's probably on a memorial somewhere in London, but actually he was born here, and in the exhibition he's down as Roubaix, So that was really moving, and that really brought it home as well. So it's fascinating, and you can just stop at places, and often in the most ridiculous bits of odd bit of countryside, there's like an information board telling you, like Pilken Ridge, 300 British troops died here, and 25 West Indians and some Irish folks and goodness knows what. And then we visited there's not many of them, but you can visit some German cemeteries. There's one at Langemark, and the German cemeteries are not run really by the Commonwealth War Graves Commission. So Erik mentioned the Commonwealth War Graves Commission. I mean, these guys do a sterling job. Their vans are everywhere, and it seems to me like the perfect job in many ways. They go from cemetery to cemetery, and they take meticulous care of these gravestones. And it is really, really impressive, the work they put in. And it seems to be well funded. And the Belgian authorities, on every cemetery, it says the land here is given, in honor of the Commonwealth soldiers who died liberating this from the Germans. And there seems to be no shortage of money to keep them up. But the German cemeteries, on the other hand, are privately funded, and no one seems to want to, glorify them. Glorify is probably the wrong word, but they're not sort of remembered in the same way, and they're a bit. It's hard to put. I think they lack in funding. They don't have like the equivalent of the Commonwealth War Graves Commission. Each soldier doesn't have its own little memorial stone like in the Commonwealth graves. It's normally a bit of black marble or black stone, and there might be 200 or 300 names engraved on it on the floor, and then you've got all these slabs going right across the field, and it's kind of powerful in its own way, but it's different, so it's really interesting,
although, like, to be interestingly fair, like the Commonwealth gravestones, everybody has one, but like when you read them, what struck me is there's a little epitaph, a little like saying, whatever. And to me, they seemed, because they were done right then and there. Like a lot of them, like they were buried within months or whatnot of their passing. It's like the poor folks who were doing all the engravings on these gravestones were just like pulling sayings out of a jar. Like one of them just said, "Well done." Like it's so impersonal and horrid. Like this. Yeah. This
of course, they would be.
Who's probably a poor kid fighting this stupid war that was fought between cousins, royalty cousins, because of a bunch of like overlapping treaties, because the French and the Germans at the time were spoiling for a fight because they didn't like the last fight they were in, and so they're spoiling for an asinine fight between cousins, and these poor kids from poor backgrounds get caught up in it and get buried in some field in France with the phrase "well done."
Yeah.
I have strong words for that.
Yeah, but it's of its time, isn't it? It was of its time, and that's what you have to remember. These days, it wouldn't say "well done." I'm sure. And a lot of them just, of course, they don't know. That just says is a Commonwealth soldier known to God quite regularly. So, you go around Bedford House Museum, which is the next to Tyne Cot, which is where most of the Passchendaele dead are. And Tyne Cot is a strange name, but it was named by the Northumberland regiment who were out there at the time, because they thought that the German bunkers, because the Germans had a lot of time to build concrete bunkers, so they'd actually they were well bedded in, whereas the British didn't build any concrete bunkers because they saw it as defeatist. It's if you built concrete bunkers, that suggested you weren't going anywhere, you were staying there. Let's put our troops in sodden trenches that can't stay dry, and let them suffer, and then let them run into machine guns. But so the Northumberland regiment saw these bunkers, and it reminded them of cottages that they'd see by the River Tyne. So it referred to as they put signs that once they'd overrun this area, they just says, "Here is Tyne Cottage," and it became the biggest grave site in northern France, Tyne Cot. And there's a little museum there now. And as you approach the museum, you just hear this disembodied female voice. And it's really quite eerie. We arrived there, and there was a thunderstorm, and we were approaching the exhibition area, and suddenly out of the thunder was still rumbling in the background, which was reminiscent of I know it's not really, but you can imagine guns going off and things. So you got this thunder going in the background, and then suddenly these voices of names, and she's on a loop, and she's just naming every single soldier that's buried there, and just saying, like Bill Smith.
So
William
Briggs. What images did you make?
Well, the first time and the second time it was pretty similar. It was the landscape around. It was if I saw some industrial buildings, some bits of canals that now look lovely and pristine with wind turbines on them, but if you look back at the original photographs, it's just like hell on earth,
Mm-hmm.
Some more abstract images we went to Vimy Ridge. I mentioned Vimy Ridge. So Vimy was fought over some high ground, and it wasn't part of the Ypres salient. It was on the Western Front, but it wasn't part of the Ypres salient. So Vimy was taken by Canadian regiments in 1917, I think it was, and the whole area now is a huge memorial to the dead, really. And there's this in 1930 they built this memorial, and you can Google it, the Vimy Ridge Memorial, and it's like twin towers with overlooking the Flanders landscape at the edge of this memorial, which is bright white sandstone, maybe. And there's this angel figure, and she's standing on this wall, and her clothes are draping down over the wall, and she's looking out, and she's meant to signify the sorrow of all the Canadian nations. And at the visitor centre, which is just brilliant, it's run by young Canadian students university students who get an opportunity to do a paid sort of internship. There's a course run by the Canadian government, and you've got to be French speaking and as well. So they get paid to come over here. They get given accommodation. They get a car. We've spent loads of time with one of the young ladies who took us underground into one of the tunnels, and then as we came up from the tunnel, she said, "Right, this is where the Canadians came out in 1917, and they went up, and the German front line was 20 yards over there, and they went up into a hail of machine gun bullets. And please, at this point, there's only me and Julie. There's no one else on this. I've got shivers going down my spine now." She said, "You just need to be quiet now, because we don't talk now. This point is just too sad,
Mm-hmm.
And you come up, and then as you come up, they've dug out the trenches and recreated them, and you can see the German lookout is just like 20 yards away where the machine guns were. And so these young Canadians are they're a real credit to their country, these youngsters. And after we'd been around them, it was a really hot day. We spent the whole day at Vimy Ridge. Then we walked down to the memorial, and we sat in the shade of the stone. And this young Canadian lady came back. She came back to they have to keep an eye on the memorial because folks vandalize it, really. And so they just keep a watching eye on it. And she was telling us, just talking about her life out there as a student, and the friends she's made, and what a powerful effect it's had on on her life, really. So I didn't take any large. It was such a hot day. The large format camera stayed in the car on that day, but I got some pinhole shots and some Holger pictures. So I had the Holger with me and pinhole camera for those times when, you just can't have the large format camera with me all the time.
I beg to differ on that, Simon. Yeah.
Well, you can, yeah, because you're carrying like handheld things. But I did have that Calumet stand-up thing where you put your arms in, and to change film. The first, and I'd not used it in anger before, and it was quite hot while we were there, and because I'd not worked out a working system, I'd stuck things in there, and then of course, as soon as I got my hands in there, I started sweating, and the forehead was sweating, but after I'd done it a couple of times, I worked out a system. Maybe I should have worked out a system before I went out there and tried it in anger, but I didn't. So that was quite useful. And then I've developed. I also shot 4 sheets of Ektar 100. 2 of them were part of the project, really. 2 weren't. At Bedford House Cemetery, when I looked over the wall at Bedford House Cemetery, there was a wheat field with loads of poppies in. So I jumped over the wall, lowered myself down, and put the camera quite low, and did some very shallow focus on some poppies moving in the wind, and those negs look great. The color negs look great, and the black and white negs look great. I put a red filter on to try and make the red stand out a bit more against the green wheat. So I'm going to what I'm going to do, I'm going to pull together the negatives from 2017 and from 2023. I'm going to print them all on 5x7 Ilford warm tone resin coated paper, because I've just got a box of that, and so I'll have a series of these little prints to hold, and then I'm going to it's nearly finished, Simon, don't worry. Then I'm going to make some fiber prints and do some typed notes, on my typewriter, because it's all analog, along with some excerpts from various books I've read or journeys we made on the time, my thoughts, and it'll just become a little box set of prints and notes for the family, really. Simon.
I was sorry. Erik was trying to get me into the conversation several times.
Right.
I put my hand up.
Well, I didn't. I only noticed it last time. Did you put your hand up somewhere else?
Yeah, but it
would help if we could see you, wouldn't it?
I know.
Instead of the eye of Sarah, the eye of Simon.
The eye of Simon.
Yes,
if I could see you, I can tell. I had no idea if you're asleep or hanging on to every word I've said. I can see Erik, but I can't see you.
I need a new computer. As simple as that. It can't cope with doing video and all these other things at the same time, unfortunately. But no, I wanted to just earlier on. I just wanted to, when you were talking about the condition of the German graves, and you can understand, why they're not as well. There's a difference anyway.
Yeah.
And but what the other side of it is in southern Staffordshire, which is the county I live in the UK. There's a place called Cannock Chase, and it's a large forested area. But within that area, there's and it's run by the Commonwealth Graves Commission, and there's a German cemetery there, and it's I believe it's for German soldiers and internees, I believe. Through both the World Wars, and it's for people that were captured, I believe, and died in captivity, if you like, and it's very different from what you're describing how the German graves are in northern France, and you can sort of understand that as well, but it's very well looked after. And incidentally, I was up there with a rolly cord, and I decided to take a few photographs, which I need to put out actually, and I'll be doing that soon. Although I won't put them into the large format group. It's not, well, I might do a single post and just pop them in there, so that we've referenced them. But yeah, that's again, it's one of those places that everything's very, very quiet there, even though it's, like you said, busy area. There's car parks, there's people going out just to play in the woods and all that kind of stuff. But it's just a really, really peaceful space, and it's just odd to see this almost like a part of Germany in the middle of the Staffordshire countryside. So there's that. And lightening things up ever so slightly when you say about taking your Holger out to take photos. I mean, there are some times, I think Erik could actually tell us he's taken a photograph with one of his made up lenses and then actually just shot it with the Holger sometimes. So that could be a cheat's way to do.
I was over the years, I've been sort of tempted to some degree to buy one of these lomography Petzval bokeh control lenses. There's various iterations of them, and there's I got an email to say they're back in stock, the 85mm lovely black Nikon F version 85mm bokeh control, about 400 quid, and I put a post out saying, kind of tempted me. I mean, I haven't got the money anyway, but then I started looking at I went to see my friend Jevon Carey, who's on Twitter, who lives half an hour away in the Fens, and I saw him back end of last week, and I'd been to see Ben Mills to pick up some darkroom equipment, and I stopped off at Jevon to drop a load of magazines into him, and he gave me one of his book he'd recently published on the Fens, and we sat there having coffee, and he's a lovely guy. He lives in this old farmhouse with loads of land, with a huge beard. And I said, if I go and get my Rolleiflex and stick my Rollin R2 close-up filter, can I shove it in your face and take a picture? And he said, yeah, if you want. I said, I'll do another one. You standing in your polytunnel like an environmental portrait. And I had 2 frames of Portra 160 left. So I stuck the Rollin R2 on, which is a bit close. The Rollin R1 takes your 3 foot minimum focus and changes it into 1.5 feet, and the Rollin R2 takes it down to sort of half as much again. So I don't know, 10 inches or something. It's pretty close, but 10 inches to a foot or something. So I had it on as close as I could, and I was really near his face. And so the whole picture, like, I've got one eye, and I was doing it handheld. He said, "Do you want a tripod?" I said, "No." I said, "It's fine. Tripods are for pussies." So I was, and of course, when you got that, I was on F8. Because I think any wider and nothing would have been in focus, and you get to that point where you can't really focus. You just sway your body slightly backwards and forwards, and at the point when something appears to be in focus, you click. And I've got one eye sharp, the other, and because I wasn't quite full on to his face, he's probably going to think it's way too close, but I think it's quite interesting. And I've only looked at the negative, but I've got this sort of fall off around the outside. The Rollin R2 does seem to generate some fall off, as does my Holger when I use it. So I've decided now that I don't need to spend 400 quid on a lomography Petzval 85mm lens when I can just get something that I like equally as well with a Rollin R or a Holger. That's what I've told myself anyway.
The other thing, Andrew, have you not tried your Leica projection lens with your bright lens caps?
Well, though it's sitting behind me, I think.
Yeah, but have you used it?
Yes, not really in anger in any project. Like, I'd like to use it for portraits, but I've got that problem at the moment still of pairing it up with the right sort of film to control.
Of course, yeah.
I've got no shutter really, have I? You need a speed graphic, don't you? Or to be honest, it's the only reason why I'd really want another 4x5 camera, because I'm not really into accumulating 4x5 cameras, is to get one with a focal plane shutter, or to get Steve Lloyd or someone else to just crack on and make some affordable shutter mechanism that you can stick to barrel lenses or these projector lenses. So I've got it up there ready for a project. I have had it on the camera, but I want to make it's just not easy for me to use at the moment until I get some more control over shutter.
Well, the good news is you can get something like a speed graphic or a micropress for roughly the similar kind of price, if not less, than that Petzval 85.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then that opens up you to so many wacky and wonderful lenses.
It does. Yeah, you're right. No, you're right. And it's probably going to happen at some point. But, at the moment, any money I get each month, Julian, I don't know what other folks do about their funding their hobby. I don't do enough workshops this year. I haven't done enough workshops this year to really fund a lot. I did last year. That funded quite a bit of stuff. But, you go and buy a box of paper. I mean, I bought that box of 5x7 paper, resin coated, and that was like 50 quid, And if you want to go, and I bought some 9.5 by 12 fiber warm tone paper that someone was selling on eBay because he didn't want it anymore, and that was 60 quid. But new, it's like 110, 120 quid a box now, for the warm tone stuff. And, you set yourself a budget every month for film and or paper, and you can easily be doing, either on film or paper, and the money just goes, So I struggle to put any aside to buy more gear on the basis that I'd rather push that money into darkroom stuff, really,
I mean, I was going to say that, there's the Graflex press cameras, which is like the micropress that Diamond talks about. But I've really fallen in love with shooting like the Graflex SLRs, the Super D and whatnot. So I can actually, or for me, the 3As, because they allow me to shoot panoramic, which I absolutely love shooting panoramics nowadays. Because I can actually see what I'm shooting in real time. Like I don't have to ground glass it, close it, insert whatever. Like I can shoot it like.
Totally with you. Just to interrupt you there, that seeing George's 4x4 camera was a friend of mine who was with us yesterday, Christopher Mackay, who lent me his 4x5 Super D, which I decided it wasn't really for me.
Really?
And whereas the 4x4, it'll still, I'm pretty sure it's still capable of acceptance of like an Aero Hector. And all the other things that might go with that, they're going to be easier to handle. But that to me seemed like a really sensible way forward with this. And as you say, you can see what you're doing and you can press the button, which you just can't do that on the micropress or a speed graphic, and it's massively restricting. So I think that's the way I want to go myself.
You can, if you've got a lens that's mated to the rangefinder. Right, because they used to use them in that manner, but it's just difficult when you're modifying or like kludging a lens on. Like you're not, it's a much different beast, and you can change out. There's cams inside those rangefinders that will change the focal lengths, and they work brilliantly. And there's a couple different places you can pick those up, but it requires a bit of work. It's not the same thing as just like staring right down, like this is what I've got. Cool.
Well, I've given it a go because it's different. The speed graphic and the micropress, they use a different cam system. They both use cams, but they're not the same. Right. And I've given it a go with the micropress one, and I thought to myself, okay, instead of trying to make one that works with an Aero Hector, let's try and make the one that works with the lens that belonged with the camera. Along with and they matched as well with the micropress. They've got the serial number of the lens is also on the cam, so you know that the two are actually mated together, which also tells you something in its own right that that certain lenses are going to be ever so slightly different from the next lens, which is sort of worrying really. But anyway, I tried to replicate one in 3D printing to be exactly the same as the one that I've already got. So I'm thinking, well, if I can replicate that, then I can take this further because I can start to learn what kind of pitch and drop or whatever is going to be on this cam to make it focus with an Aero Hector, for instance. And I couldn't even manage to make it match the existing lens with a cam that I could use as a template. I just couldn't do it.
Really?
No.
What was so hard about it? I mean, is it just like
it just wouldn't work? It was just out. Yeah, but it's fractions. It's tiny amounts that will throw the focus out. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, fair. I can't remember the name of the. I have to see if I can find it. But I know there's at least one or two places that sell Graflex cams.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I assume to some degree, it's going to be close enough. And you would hope that one Aero Hector is the same as another Aero Hector, but seeing that, I say MPP, now whether or not they were just overcompensating things by making an individual one for an individual lens, I don't know. But the fact that they did it suggests to me that there's a good reason for doing so.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that is a challenge though. And I just like, especially for the work that I do, typically, action photography or cycling or whatever, I just really, really like being able to shoot as I go and not have to stop and flip it up and stare at the ground glass. For portraits, that's fine, but for everything else, it's just really difficult,
Yeah.
But
Holger. The Holger is the answer to everything, Erik, because it weighs nothing, right? Certainly the one I've got gives a beautiful sweet spot in the middle. Okay, you've got to have your subject in the middle, okay, and you maybe don't like that. But then you just find a Holger where the sweet spot is off to the side somewhere. And you've got one camera, right? One loaded with HP5, one film stock. You're not lugging pounds and pounds of gear on your bike. And there you go.
Yeah, but the Holga doesn't have... I've actually been tempted to take the Holga Panoramic. I think there's a Holga 614, right?
612.
Yeah,
and there's one with a lens as well. There's a Holga, which was really hard to find, and I think there must have been a load of new old stock found or something, because B&H, I think, had a shed load of them for sale, and I think you can find them more regularly now, but you couldn't for a time. You couldn't get a 6x12 lensed Holga.
Right. But to take one of those and like take off the pinhole or take off their lens and just use it as a platform.
Yeah, that's sensible.
Well, I was going to say, Steve Lloyd of Chroma, he's started to make a 617 camera now.
Yes.
Yeah, but there's still the thing with those again is that they're still zone focus, right?
Oh yeah.
So like the ability to look through and see a live image and have a mirror reflex.
Yes.
I mean, you pay for it with the Graflex SLRs because they're big, they're bulky, they're beastly, and because they're old, they're prone to failure in the field, which is the biggest challenge. And now, actually, there's something I also wanted to mention on that topic of like, Graflex repair shops and whatnot, is that here in the States, one of the handful of them, 20th Century Camera had a fire. Who I was actually going to send my 3As to, because the people who work on the Graflex 3As, they're weird little they're weird cameras. There weren't many of them, and they're built differently than other Graflexes. So folks who are willing to take one apart and work on one and put it back together are pretty rare. But he had a fire, and so he has for you folks out there in large format land who do a lot of Graflex stuff, if you want to support one of the rare Graflex repair folks who also does accessories and all sorts of stuff, Jeff Perry there's a fundraiser to get him going back again, because like everything burned, like his whole workshop went away, which was really, really heartbreaking. So
he's going through a rough time, isn't he? His cancer diagnosis doesn't quite clear up. So I know he's living with some relatives now, because at one point he was kipping in his car. It's just some kind of horror story, really.
Yeah. So we'll throw that in the notes, but much because he's always been very kind. He answers all sorts of random questions for me all the time about that Graflex stuff and repair and the 3A and where to try doing lubrication. And
he's been super helpful with Dave Shrimpton as well, I think, and helped him out a lot.
Yeah. So I just wanted to circle back around to that before we finished up today. Throw the man some love.
Absolutely.
And I'll try and find the link, because he has got a fund. I think the fundraiser platform he was using, because I think he didn't have an active bank account or something. If you're outside the USA, I don't think it's easy to donate to it.
He was running it on Venmo, and I think the workshop was attached to his house, and the house didn't burn down. So I'm not exactly sure his current state of things, but he was running a Venmo fundraiser.
He was homeless for a while. Well, he still is homeless, I think.
That I did not. Let me find it now. I'll have to check that out. I didn't know about that. But
it's the American healthcare system for you, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. There's that for sure. It's awful. Yeah, you're right. Last few weeks I've been living in my car.
Well, he's living with his niece now, I think. She's taken, and he says he's feeling more supported and loved and cared for now than pretty much any time in the last year or so.
Yeah,
I don't think he wanted to reach out to her. I don't think perhaps she realised he was in such a desperate state. But since he did reach out to her, she's been very kind and accommodating.
Yeah, it looks like as of July 1st, so yesterday, he just had another surgery.
Yeah,
to remove another tumor. So
yeah, it's lots of love to you, Jeff. Simon,
Yeah.
are you gonna try and end on a high note?
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, no, that's important. But
It is important. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, we all. I think we're definitely in wind down mode. Andrew, you need to go and drive your Tesco truck very, very soon, don't you?
I do. Yeah.
So, which means that we're not going to have time for a discussion that we may have had with Erik about the wonders of artificial intelligence and photography.
Oh yeah.
We'll say by ranting on that.
Exactly. So I think if I'm correct in thinking, you're absolutely fine with AI, aren't you, Erik?
We should get Shane. We'll get Erik and Shane Balkowicz to debate it.
Yeah. No, because I'm not fine with it, and neither is he.
No, I know. Common ground then, Erik. That's not a bad thing.
Yeah. I mean, I'm okay with that on some levels, but not on the creative levels. We'll just say not on the create images level.
No. Well, yeah. So we'll leave that for this time. Who knows? We might get into that one in a future episode. So let's go straight into shout outs then, because we've already given our email address out. We've already done coffee thank yous. So let's go shout outs and then we can get out of here. So Andrew, have you got any shout outs?
Well, only a person who's been very kind. A gentleman called Peter Neal contacted me a while ago, actually, and he sent me a reference about a World War One. Well, I think he was a World War One photographer, or does what I've been doing, going back and shooting World War One sites, and I'm really not sure, because I've tried Googling the heck out of him just recently again, and all I get is Cartier watches. So there's this guy called J.C. Cartier and his World War One photos. So Peter reached out and says, I mailed you a while ago about J.C. Cartier and his World War One photos. Are you still shooting 5x4? If so, this is the interesting bit. I have some film you might be interested in. Is it possible to phone you, Peter? So anyway, Peter's bio is, and I chatted to him the other day, yesterday or the day before. Used to be course director, BA Hons Photography, Ulster University, Belfast.
Cool.
Just an artist now, and he's been going to Renaucatres des Arles, so the Arles Photography Festival in France, which I've loved. I've had a thing about in my head to go to for 20 years. He's been going since 1989. So when I rang him, we had a long chat about his life as a course director, the type of people he's had through, the mix between digital and it'd make an interesting guest actually at some point. And but then he said at the end, and I've got all this. I'm sure he said he's got 50, 75 sheets of Fujichrome 4x5 film. He says, "Do you? Is it any use to you?" I said, "Well, yeah." I said, "It is. I've not shot any 4x5 chrome film before. I've done plenty of 35mm." I think mainly because it's knowing what to do with a finished product, apart from looking at it and
going, holy cow,
and going, this is lovely, you know. Yeah. I mean, I can't even scan it easily, not with my current gear. But I'm thinking, okay, well, let's see what he sends me, and I'll find a project to use some of it, and then I'll find a way of digitizing it somehow with some help from buddies. And then I'll probably pass some of it on, depending on how much I get and whether it's still... He said it's been in his fridge since he's had it, apart from one or two times when it's not been in his fridge when they've moved house and stuff. So that was really nice. So I give it... So Peter, I mentioned the LFPP. Peter, can't remember whether you said you'd listened to it or not, or you were just being nice. But you can find Peter on Twitter, and he's at... Pierren. Pierre. Is that right?
Yeah.
Pierre N. So, that would be his French. Yeah, because he says he's a huge fan of the Arles Photo Festival, which he's been going to since 1989. He says he books his accommodation in January, the same place he goes to, and he just loves being in that vibe of creativity for the 2 weeks, red wine and photography and sunshine.
So it's the red wine photography. And
I think it happens in early July for a couple of weeks. And I guess Arles is to the southern part of France, but I've probably looked it up before, but I can't actually remember where it is. So yeah, Shout out to Peter, very nice chap, and because he's also sending me some large format slide film.
Couldn't you just use your new copy table for that? With the
Say again?
and then, couldn't you just use the copy table?
I don't have a digital camera.
That's right. That is limiting. Got it.
Yeah.
Fair.
So I could probably get something capable that's not going to break the bank with. I just ask some people who know about things like Simon. Simon's probably got something you could sell me. I've got a copy stand that I picked up. It's behind me now, so I've now got that I tried to give to Simon. A copy stand and a sous vide heater that I picked up the other day. They're both sitting behind me. So I've got the copy stand, I guess, or I could use a pixelatory thing, couldn't I? And a digital camera, or a push. I could use my phone and one of these this new lomography setup thing. I don't know. It bores me witless, all this scanning stuff and digitizing, which is what.
Or you could just you could send them to a friend.
I could, yeah. And if I've got a project like where I've got like a dozen slide films that I need digitizing, I could send them to a friend to do it for me, couldn't I?
Yeah.
There we go.
There you go. Sorted.
Okay, good.
Erik.
Yeah. Yes.
Shout outs.
Well, it's been a long 6 months, so I think mostly to although they don't listen to the podcast, but still John and Josh at the Radavist for continuing to publish my stuff and like take on all the weird projects that I constantly pitch them. It's rare to in the cycling media world. It's rare to have publications that will take the kind of work that I do and pay for it. So those two in particular have been just really, really great. And then Mike Cushenberry, the editor of Mountain Flyer as well on that. And then just in general, everybody who's been supportive, like you guys and everybody else over the last couple of months since I lost the day job. It's been a weird up and down kind of time. So I just appreciate the entire community around me, both in photography and cycling and friends and everybody else. So, and always my now wife, we're married, got married in February.
Oh yeah. You were going to invite us to the wedding when we last.
Oh, you guys are getting invited to one.
When we last
wedding
spoke to you, you're going to invite us to your second wedding. Not to a second woman, but your
no, not second woman. No. We're
like
not
second breakfast.
We don't do that. Second breakfast. A very Hobbit thing. Second breakfast. Third lunch. So yeah, as always, Heather, because
Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think I probably did wish you congratulations at the time, but I've completely forgotten.
Yeah.
You cad, you never did. No, you did.
Okay, well, I've got one shout out in particular, and that's to Brian Truman. And Brian Truman is, as we call him, the leader at the Six Towns Darkrooms Club. And he's the chap that kept the Darkroom Club going while he was the only member. And I rang him up one day and said, when could I come along to the Darkroom Club? And he goes, well, whatever day you like. That's pretty much how busy it was. And from that day, it's still been going. And I think usually have around about 7 people turn up every week. On a Tuesday night, by the way, in Stoke-on-Trent. So, but more to the point, Brian is an enthusiastic photographer, analog photographer and digital photographer. And he's been wholly against and having no interest whatsoever in large format photography ever since I've known him. And then last weekend, he rang me up. Oh, no, he didn't ring me up. He sent me a message on the Messenger, and I was a little bit slow to respond to it. He sent me another message to say, I've bought an Intrepid Mark IV.
Oh,
and I was thinking, what? Not so much about the fact he bought the Intrepid, but the fact he just bought a large format camera, full stop. And he was just completely out the blue. And I think he just had enough of the rest of us. And I mean, I think just about everybody that goes there is actually a large format photographer in our club, which I think is a percentage number of members to a darkroom club. That's a pretty damn good percentage. And now he's finally relented to the people. We'd actually given up on him. frankly. But now he's seen the light, and he's got an Intrepid Mark IV. He's very happy with it. I've lent him a couple of lenses. I've just made him another lens board for another lens. I'm going to lend him as well. And it's just like he's starting off in photography again, which is brilliant.
And have you told him he's got 64 episodes of the LFPP to catch up on?
Well, this is the thing. I mean, this is the first time I think I've done a shout out for Brian, and he's not listened to any episode. He doesn't listen to any podcast, and who knows whether he'll ever find out about this shout out. So I won't tell him. I'll wait till somebody else tells him, perhaps. So we'll be surprised that if he ever does actually listen, that we've mentioned him. So well done, Brian, and we're very pleased that you're going to join us on this journey.
Welcome to the fold, sir. Welcome to the fold. Exactly. So
Andrew, away from this podcast, how can people keep up with the things that you do?
On the Twitter, most commonly, and a little bit of Instagram. So you can just use my name, Andrew Bartram or Warboy Snapper. Both on the Twitter and the Instagram will find me. You can look in the show notes and get links to those, and also to my blog, which I go through fits and starts of updating that. So andrewbartram.wordpress, maybe, something like that. And the Lensless podcast as well. So at the moment, that's just me keeping that baby afloat. About 130 odd episodes of the Lensless podcast to go and listen to for all things Pinhole and a bit of Holger.
And there's a bit of large format going on in there as well. So I've listened to a few episodes recently.
Yeah, I think we might cross over with do some podcast crossover guesting. What I mean is contact some of those guests we've had on the Lensless who are into a bit of large format to come on and talk about their interests.
Well, you've had Mike Walker.
It took me ages to get him to come on. About 4 years, really.
4 years.
Yeah,
that's some perseverance, man.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's all good. So, Erik, how can people keep up with the things that you do?
Pretty much still Instagram is the ready, steady. One of these days I need to update. I've been given a minor telling off by one of our guests, Nicole White of the Rolls and Tubes Collective, that I desperately need to update my website. So one of these days I'll do that. But right now it's still Instagram. So Erik, ERIKHMATHY on Instagram. And sorry, Nicole, I will update my website soon.
Okay, and finally, I'm on Twitter as Simon Fall. That's Simon and FOR. I'm on Instagram as Simon Forster Photographic, which is also the name of my website. If you stick www.co.uk at either end of that word, where you can buy lots of lens caps. The largest collection. They had the largest collection of lens caps in the world.
In the world,
it's available for sale at least. Anyway,
the one for the Ravenny spot meter, which I use exclusively during my 11 days in France, was a delight, and it was made even more so by the Pro Black caps that came from Simon IV Photographic or whatever he just said, and the rather neat little battery adapter that it now runs on AAA batteries instead of LR44s. So, and it worked beautifully, and I highly recommend Mr. Beckberger's Matt's. Have I just butchered his name? Anyway, Matt's Mr. Ravenny Lab.
Yes, Beckberger. What's it, Beckberger?
I don't know. I think that's what I just. I think that's what I just said. Yeah, I know, but it doesn't mean I can pronounce his surname. So I highly recommend that, and he's very good, and he's. I think the latest firmware does away with any lingering. There was a few sort of lingering things. Basically, when he finds things that people tell him things aren't working properly or tweaks that need doing, he updates the firmware and sends you a link on an email, and it's very easy to update.
And not just fixing faults. He adds functionality that which is great.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's it for that. Finally, let's thank Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com for his excellent theme music, which is playing right now, Two Finger Johnny. And that's it. So I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. I would say this week's podcast, but you never know when it's going to be before we're back. I hope you've enjoyed today's show, and we will be back, and we will endeavour to make it. I don't know. Should we try and set a goal of doing more than 3 shows in 1 year? Yes, I think we should.
Oh yes, I don't think that's that hard to do.
No,
it just means we've got 1 more and we're on target, and 2 more and we've hit the jackpot.
That's it. So we're going to go.
Standard.
We'll go for gold. So goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
See ya.